welcome to another episode of Tech Talk Tuesday. I'm the man with the crackling mic. My name is not Mike. My name is Matt. I'm joined always with Neil Tardy. How are you doing today, Neil?
I am good, other than listening to your crackling mic and your volume going up and down, you know?
It's a real treat. Like, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. But
I hope you're doing that on purpose, because you're just going up and down so much right there.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Yes. Welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday, where we have technical difficulties just like you.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do.
That's right.
So if you're not familiar with Tech Talk Tuesday, we add crackle effects to all of our voices and make it very zappy. But we're also really taking the tech news and doing our best to, I guess, break that down into more digestible pieces. So that's our goal. And I think we're achieving on both sides, don't you think?
We are the ones reporting the news, right? So I guess it's up to our viewers.
I think it is. Yeah. So we got a few stories for you today, and we'll jump right in. Our first one is Aaron, who's come back with a story, funny enough, about sea slugs.
This week in the news, graduate student Sayaka Mino and researcher Yoichi Yusa made an interesting discovery while studying the sea slug species Elysia atroviridis. These sea slugs, found off the coast of Japan, display a unique and previously undocumented form of autotomy, which is the official sciencey word for self-amputation. The slugs will actively amputate 80% of their own body to expel parasites living within it. This is when the magic really happens, because these creatures can then regenerate the amputated body mass, including heart and internal organs, within 2 weeks. Back to you, nerds.
And Matt is now muted because his volume is down. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. That was like super interesting to me when I read that today, or well, not today, rather this past week, because the fact that something can just take 80% of itself and just say, nah, screw it, like I'm good, is just absolutely batty to me. I love it.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty wild. It's good to have a voice again.
Yeah, even if it's very quiet.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's better that than I think. Oh, nope, there we go. You just can't have it both ways. So over the weekend, I redid my computer, and every time I do something like that, I feel like it always comes with some sort of consequence. And here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought the sea slug thing, that's pretty wild, dude. Like that's, I don't know. I couldn't tell like if how long I guess it would go on to like perpetuity or whatever, but because there's some sort of like squid, I think that like they've discovered that actually does this like cycle, right, where it's almost like the Benjamin Button thing, and maybe we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very, very interesting though. So
yeah, so I plan on cutting my head off periodically and just seeing how that goes.
That's all right. Well, get back with us and let us know how that goes.
I will try. In other news, so Microsoft caught a bunch of flack. They own GitHub, and that people were like really kind of antsy about that anyway. But they got kind of beat up this last week, and here's Chad to tell us about it.
Last week, Microsoft created an absolute firestorm when they removed proof-of-concept research on proxy login that allows malicious hackers to gain access to Exchange servers. Now, this had been a hack or a vulnerability in Exchange that has been going on for several months, I'd say back to late December, early January. Traces its origins to a Chinese hacking group that first created it, and then that followed about more than 10 massive state-sponsored hacking groups that have gained access to now over 100,000 Exchange servers. Now, Microsoft did finally release a patch last week, but still estimates that over 125,000 Exchange servers have yet to install it. Now, these critics are upset that Microsoft yanked the research and the code in the first place, as supposedly GitHub is intended to be a collaborative environment for all developers to share various codes. All I have to say to that is Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. Where is the criticism really coming from? Don't we want them to remove malicious code and viruses and ways to hack various systems and networks? I mean, GitHub at the end of the day is a collaborative coding repository. It is not the daggone dark web. I mean, let me ask you this way. I would say to these critics of Microsoft pulling this, is if the same group published code that showed the critics' bank accounts and how to gain access to it, would they really be upset if GitHub, or rather Microsoft, remove it? Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, because I see both sides of this, right? Like, exploits and the code being out there is definitely nothing new. But I think Chan has a point, right? Like, it's about access and what is the expected level of access.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get where some critics are coming from, where GitHub was supposed to be just like an open source, basically repository where you can go find cool things that people are worked on, things to include in your project, things like that, right? That's what GitHub was kind of founded on, as well as like a source management system. But yeah, I mean, like, if we find malicious code, we should remove it. Like, so I'm like on both sides of that, right? Like, I see why people are upset, but I'm also like, guys, I think you're missing the point. Like, again, if there's malicious code out there and people have access to it, like, let's remove that access and remove that code, right? Yeah, so I think it's a little silly what they're getting worked up about, but I definitely see, like, it's definitely not in the spirit of what GitHub was founded for. But again, that's not who owns it anymore either, right? Like, Microsoft bought it, Microsoft can do what they want. So
yeah, and I think, I would like to think that if this were malicious, like code for getting into an Oracle like subsystem or anything like that, I think they would react the same way.
Right.
So
yeah,
I don't think
this is just like a purely Microsoft thing. It's just like where it got removed from and like who was involved, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you. Like, if Oracle did this because somebody got a hold of something and published it somewhere, like, they do the exact same thing, guys. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Well, moving from hacks to more of a science theme, right? So there was a lot of hubbub. That's right. I said hubbub. Who says that? No one says that anymore.
No one says that.
This guy. I'm bringing the hubbub back.
That's
yeah.
Right.
So a story about gravity in it, like, the measurement, we think of this as like this constant thing and like this very well known, almost like a constant, but researchers are finding, on the most minuscule foundations, how the gravity is affected. And here's Aaron actually with more about that.
It is well known that Earth's gravitational pull measures 9.81 meters per second squared. That number has been used to calculate apples falling on heads across the world for decades. You may be surprised to hear then that gravity is actually among the least understood forces, despite its classroom popularity. Our lack of understanding comes from gravity being a very weak force, often measured at massive scales such as neutron stars or black holes. That may be changing. Researchers in Vienna announced progress toward detecting gravitational force generated by tiny objects, little spheres of gold, only 2 millimeters across and weighing less than 1/10 of a gram each. This would be the first measure of gravity on such small scales, and the researchers are pretty sure they can go smaller. We won't bore you with the specific implementation details. However, I will say that the measure is so precise that the researchers have to take extreme measures not to accidentally influence their own data. Among the precautions, ensuring that no person walks within 3 meters of the experimental device, and making sure that there are no trains running within 50 meters while the experiment is running. Either could generate enough measurement noise to throw off the experiment results. This progress means that our scientific communities are another step closer to generating a theory of gravitational forces that is compatible with our current theory of quantum mechanics, and could lead to new research possibilities around string theory and dark energy. But these expanded avenues for research still depend on the ability to scale down these experiments to smaller and smaller units. Back to you, nerds.
I like having some gold. I don't care how microscopic it is.
That's right. It's still worth something, right?
Yeah, and apparently it's very useful.
Apparently, in this case, it is. I found this very interesting, though, that we, and myself included, tend to think of gravity as like this really large thing, like Aaron said, with like black holes and such. But the fact that I did not know that we, as like a species, don't know very much about gravity, right? Like that's kind of crazy that we use gravity in all these calculations, and like we have constants for it and all these things, and yet we know very, very little about it.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty wild. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they're continuing to kind of try to find a bridge, right, between the macro and the micro, or in this case, like the quantum, I guess, but and see how those worlds, either mesh or don't. So I don't know. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that they would mesh, right? Like, I mean, if it's the same force, you would think that like those two things would be the same, but they might not be, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're all living inside of one of those lockers, like in Men in Black, like where it's just universe within universe within universe. Whoa, that would be a lot of hubbub.
That would be a lot of hubbub.
We're bringing it back. Other hubbub was made this week also when Netflix upset a lot of people who have been doing the things that they knew they were at some point in time going to get busted for doing. And that's sharing your password and letting other people into your account. Netflix had a little bit to say, and so does our own Chad Lund here with that story.
This week, one of the major technology stories has been that Netflix is now going to be cracking down on your ability to do password sharing. And again, unless you've been living under a rock or like Neil, have your own personal Outlook account, you probably are well aware of this. At $17 a month, not that really a big a deal if you have to end up paying for your account, but I'll be curious to see if Netflix faces any backlash of users that are upset about this, or even more importantly, if other platforms will follow suit and really how effective it will be.
Feel like Chad was trying to bust your chops for having an Outlook account, Neil.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a pretty standard thing since like Hotmail and other accounts that Microsoft now owns all get wrapped under Outlook, and you get your own Outlook account with that now.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, actually, I have a Hotmail account from way back in the day. It's still linked to my Xbox Live account and all those kinds of things. But you're right. Yeah, now they send you off to Outlook.com to pick all that stuff up. Yep. So maybe you're not such a weirdo in this instance.
Yeah, in that instance, I'm not. But
I don't want to close off anything. Do you share your password with anybody?
Heck no.
No, because you were like one of the most security conscious people anyway. And even if it's just Netflix, I can't imagine you like giving somebody your password and letting them like screw up like all of your like recommendations and things.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I would never do that. But I don't share passwords like for anything. So I know people do this. I know that this is how people get around things. I know like when people go to Airbnbs, they forget to like log out of their Netflix or Hulu account, and so they can share that. So like people end up using that, and like I get all that, but like I'm very conscious about like logging out of those things because I don't want people messing with my stuff.
No, I'm in the same boat. Like I just don't do that. You know, and I've been asked in the past, like, oh, you have that? Like, oh, can I just get that? And I'm like, oh, sure, I'll get that over to you. And I just am not going to. Like, it's just that subject is dead.
Yep.
But I do understand that it's a phenomenon. Like, there's a lot of people doing that. And it's just kind of wild to me that somebody could be that upset about kind of like them, I don't know, kind of clamping down on their like acceptable use,
right?
In terms of service.
That was never intended, guys.
Yeah, super weird, right? Like just super weird. Well, I think that's everything we have for today. Unless you want to give me your Netflix password.
No, but I would like to get to the user question, which somebody kindly sent in, and that is it damaging to my laptop or phone battery if I don't let it die fully or fully die before charging it again?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, this is a really good one because there's a lot of conflicting information out there, particularly if you're used to like old batteries, but with lithium ion batteries, it's super easy to take care of these things. So the answer specifically to this question is no, you do not need to do that. So with battery technology these days, there's a very easy recommendation. They will last longer if you keep them cool and you don't leave them plugged in while they're running at 100%. So if it's already completely charged, unplug it. Those are like the two biggest things that you can do. And I am super bad about that. Let's be really honest with ourselves too. Like these are just prolonging your battery life on these things. Like batteries will slowly deplete and will continually die over time, and you will need to replace them at some point. But you can certainly prolong them if you keep them cool and you don't leave them plugged in when they're 100%. You don't need to let your devices die to then go ahead and start plugging it in. That's no longer a concern with modern batteries.
Yeah, well, I definitely leave them plugged in, but they're always with me, so they're definitely cool.
Yeah. Since Matt's so cool, I think that's where we're going to end it. So thanks for joining us on this edition of Tech Talk Tuesday. If you want to read up on any of the things that Matt, Aaron, Chad, and I discussed today, you can find them in the description below. While you're there, go ahead and give the stream a like or follow or subscribe because it really helps us out and you won't miss any future editions of Tech Talk Tuesday. And we go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, guys. I know we just rolled the clocks around, but yes, it's still 7 o'clock. If you want to have your question answered on the air, you can hit Matt or I up on Twitter. Matt's apparently not on Twitter anymore, but I know he is. Matt's handle is at the Matt Ray because again, there is only one of him, and mine is at Neil Tardy because I am basic. Yes, with the jazz hand. So thank you again for joining us on this edition. And with that, we'll see you next Tuesday.